This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
I'm your host, Abena Sankofa Imhotep, and welcome back to Black and Privileged in America podcast. Catch us on SoundCloud and on our very own platform, amplifieddsm.com. And please follow Black and Privileged in America podcast on our Facebook page. There is a lot going on in the world today, a lot of war. And so we're going to be briefly touching on war and literacy and love. Now, I know that those subjects, war, literacy, and love, seem worlds apart, but they're actually so related. The first thing I want to do is celebrate literacy. Today, I'll be reading to you from a book by Bell Hooks called All About Love. But before I do that, I want to celebrate Black Iowa Newspaper. Black Iowa Newspaper is published by Dana James right here in Des Moines, Iowa. It's a statewide newspaper that highlights and elevates the experiences and stories of Black Iowans across the state. Most recently, the fall issue was released, and on the front page, there are so many compelling stories, one of which is the new All-In Grocers, a grocery store in Waterloo. So if you're in the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area, congratulations. It's my understanding, according to this story, that that particular neighborhood in Waterloo hasn't had a grocery store in 50 years. And so thanks to the hard work of some people who live right there in the community, along with stakeholders and investors, they were able to make All-In Grocers a reality. Congratulations. Also, the headline on the front page of Black Iowa News for the fall issue is about Black maternal health. The headline says, "Doctor says healthcare system is inherently broken and racist. Endangered. Racism in maternity care." So I would encourage all of you, if you have not picked up a copy of Black Iowa News, please do so. There are about 30 plus areas across the state where you can pick up a copy of this newspaper. It is free, and it's also available to subscribers online, as well as I know that Dana and her organization accept financial contributions as well. One of the pickup places is the headquarters for my organization, Sankofa Literary Empowerment Group. So if you are anywhere near downtown Des Moines, feel free to stop by Sankofa Literary and Empowerment Group at Mainframe Studios, and our address is 900 Keosauqua Way, Suite 370. And right outside the studio at our free bookshop, you will see copies of Black Iowa News. So Dana, congratulations to you. I hope all of the readers all across Iowa enjoy this publication. This is the second issue. And I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be able to see our stories from all across the state and for people to see themselves reflected in the news. I think that's critically important. And I think not just should we support local media, but we should always support our own media. So Dana James and other news entities like Hello Iowa or Hola Iowa, all of these newspapers and news outlets, they need our support. So I encourage all of our listeners here at Black and Privileged in America to please support your local news. All right. So now, you know, there's another war. There's another war. So we're well acquainted with the conflict that has been dominating a lot of our national and international news, the Russia-Ukraine war. And just several days ago, Hamas has launched a war against Israel, and Israel responded in kind. So there is a conflict there. And I was just curious about what are all of these conflicts in the world? What are they? Can we name them? And while these situations are complex and at times contradictory and really hard to wrap our minds around. I searched for all of the conflicts that are presently happening right now in the world. So I'm going to read you a list, and I think it's safe to say that it's not an exhaustive list of conflicts. However, these are some of the conflicts that are happening around the globe right now. When I say conflict, what do I mean? Conflict meaning war, meaning death, brutality, potentially rape, people, countries that are impacted economically, socially, property being destroyed by missiles and bombs and all of the things that you would think war entails. That's what I mean when I say conflict. So yes, we know Russia, Ukraine, Israel and Hamas, Armenia and Azerbaijan. There's conflict in Iran. There's conflict in Yemen and between the Yemen people and the Houthi people. There's conflict in Ethiopia, Tigray, and Eritrea. There's conflict in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and M23. There's conflict in the Sahel, with the Sahel in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. There's ongoing conflict in Haiti. There is conflict in Pakistan. There is conflict in China and Taiwan. All of these are conflicts that are happening in the world right now. And living in the United States, it seems so easy to not have a clue what's happening. It seems so easy to go about our lives without any consideration about what may be happening with our neighbors all around the world. But there is conflict in the world. Bob Marley has a song. And one of the lines of the song goes, "There is so much trouble in the world." As a matter of fact, he goes, "So much trouble in the world." And there is so much trouble, which is why I wanted to focus today on literacy, war, and love, to give us a high point, to think about the possibility of showing, receiving, giving, accepting love in the midst of global turmoil. So I'm really grateful for this show, for my show, for Amplified and the platform, for the amazing team here that we have in Bella and Abraham to support what we do here, and the highlight that we have now during this season of books and making book recommendations. So one of the books that I recommend for all of us, especially at this time in the world, is the book that I mentioned earlier called All About Love by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks was born Gloria Jean Watkins, and she assumed her grandmother's name. Her grandmother's name was actually Bell with an E. And so when Gloria Watkins decided to embark upon her professional career as an educator, a scholar, and a writer, she assumed a pseudonym in her grandmother's name, and she uses all lowercase letters with no E at the end of Bell for her. So Bell Hooks. And she's written a ton of material, and in my studio I have several of her books. She's just an amazing thinker. And so in thinking about ways to heal and galvanize our spirit and our minds around all of these global conflicts, the one book that came to the fore was All About Love. So I'm going to spend a good portion of this episode reading to you. No, you're not too old to be read to. We all deserve to be read to. So I'm going to read to you an excerpt of All About Love by Bell Hooks. And this is coming from chapter 12, near the end of the book, about healing, redemptive love. And there's a quote that opens this chapter, and it begins this way. "We have been brought into the inner wine cellar and sealed with his seal, which is to suffer out of love. The ardor of this love greatly outweighs any suffering we may undergo. For suffering comes to an end, but love is forever. Tessa Bielicki. Love heals. When we are wounded in the place where we would know love, it is difficult to imagine that love really has the power to change everything. No matter what has happened in our past, when we open our hearts to love, we can live as if born again, not forgetting the past, but seeing it in a new way, letting it live inside us in a new way. We go forward with the fresh insight that the past can no longer hurt us. Or if our past was one in which we were loved, we know that no matter the occasional presence of suffering in our lives, we will return always to be remembered, to remembered calm and bliss. Mindful remembering lets us put the broken bits and pieces of our hearts together again. This is the way healing begins. Contrary to what we might have been taught to think, unnecessary and unchosen wounds let me read that again because that's really deep and I don't want to miss it. Contrary to what we might have been taught to think, unnecessary and unchosen suffering wounds us, but need not scar us for life. It does mark us. What we allow the mark of our suffering to become is in our own hands. In his collection of essays, The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin writes about suffering in the healing process, stating, "I do not mean to be sentimental about suffering, but people who cannot suffer can never grow up, can never discover who they are. Growing up is, at heart, the process of learning to take responsibility for whatever happens in your life. To choose growth is to embrace a love that heals. The healing power of mind and heart is always present because we have the capacity to renew our spirits endlessly, to restore the soul. I am always particularly grateful to meet people who do not feel their childhoods were marked by unnecessary pain and suffering, by lovelessness. Their presence reminds me that we do not need to undergo anything dreadful to feel deeply, that we never need suffering to be imposed upon us by acts of violence and abuse. At times, we will all be confronted with suffering, an unexpected illness, a loss. That pain will come whether we choose it or not, and not one of us can escape it. The presence of pain in our lives is not an indicator of dysfunction. Not all families are dysfunctional. And while it has been crucial for collective self-recovery that we have exposed and continue to expose dysfunction, it is equally important to revel in and celebrate its absence. Unless we can all imagine a world in which the family is not dysfunctional, but is instead a place where love abounds, we doom family life to always be and only a site of woundedness. The functional families, individuals face conflict, contradictions, times of unhappiness and suffering, just like dysfunctional families do. The difference lies in how these issues are confronted and resolved, and how everyone copes in moments of crisis. Healthy families resolve conflict without coercion, shaming, or violence. When we collectively move our culture in the direction of love, we may see these loving families represented more in the mass media. They will become more visible in all walks of daily life. Hopefully, we will all then listen to these stories with the same intensity that we have when we listen to narratives of violent pain and abuse. When this happens, the visible happiness of functional families will become part of our collective consciousness. In The Family, A Revolutionary Way of Self-Discovery, John Bradshaw offers this definition. A functional, healthy family is one in which all members are fully functional and all the relationships between the members are fully functional. As human beings, all family members have available to them the use of all their human power. They use these powers to cooperate, individuate, and to get their collective and individual needs met. A functional family is the healthy soil out of which individuals can become mature human beings. End quote. In the functional family, esteem is learned. In the functional family, self-esteem is learned, and there is a balance between autonomy and dependency. Long before the terms functional and dysfunctional were used to identify types of families, those of us who were wounded in childhood knew it because we were in pain. And that pain did not go away even when we left home. More than our pain, our self-destruction, self-betraying behavior trapped us in the traumas of childhood. We were unable to find solace or relief. We could not choose healing because we were not sure we could ever mend, that the broken bits and pieces could ever be put together again. We comforted ourselves by acting out, but this comfort did not last. It was usually followed by depression and overwhelming grief. We longed to be rescued because we did not know how to save ourselves. More often than not, we became addicted to living dangerously. Clinging to this addiction made it impossible for us to be well in our souls. As with all other addiction, letting go and choosing wellness was our only way of rescue and recovery. In many ways, Bell Hooks says, I have acted out throughout much of my life. When I began to walk on the path of love, I was awed by how quickly previous dysfunctions were changed. In the church of my girlhood, we were always told no one could give an individual salvation, that we had to choose it for ourselves. We had to want to be saved. In Toni Cade Bambara's novel, The Salt Eaters, wise older women who are healers are called in to assist the young woman who has attempted suicide. And they tell her, just so's you're sure, sweetheart, and ready to be healed, 'cause wholeness is no trifling matter. A lot of weight when you are well. End quote. Making the primal choice to be saved does not mean we do not need support or help with problems or difficulties. It is simply that the initial gesture of taking responsibility for our wellness, wherein we confess to our brokenness, our woundedness, and open ourselves to salvation, must be made by the individual. This act of opening the heart enables us to receive the healing offered to us by those who care. Although we all know we want love, we talk about the search for true love as though it is always and only a solitary quest. I am disturbed by the weighty emphasis on self in so much New Age writing on the topic and in our culture as a whole. When I would talk about my yearning for a loving partner, people told me over and over that I did not need anyone else. They would say I did not need a companion and or a circle of loved ones to feel complete, that I should be complete inside myself. Well, while it is definitely true that inner contentedness and a sense of fulfillment can be there whether or not we commune in love with others, it is equally meaningful to give voice to that longing for communion. Life without communion and love with others would be less fulfilling, no matter the extent of one's self-love. All over the world, people live in intimate daily contact with one another. They wash together, eat and sleep together, face challenges together, share sorrow and joy. The rugged individual who relies on no one else is a figure who can only exist in a culture of domination where a privileged few use more of the world's resources than the many who must daily do without. Worship of individualism has in part led us to an unhealthy culture of narcissism that is so all-pervasive in our society. Western travelers journey to the poorest countries and are astounded by the level of communion between people who, though not materially rich, have full hearts. And it is no accident that so many of the spiritual teachers we gravitate to in our affluent society which is driven by the ethos of rugged individualism, come from cultures that value interdependency and working for a collective good over independence and individual gain. While terms like codependency, which came out of programs for individual self-recovery, rightly show the ways in which excessive dependency can be unhealthy, especially when it is marked by the support of addictive behavior, we still need to talk about healthy interdependency. No organization dedicated to healing demonstrates this principle more than Alcoholics Anonymous. The millions of people who attend AA meetings seek a place of recovery and find that the affirming community that surrounds them creates an environment of healing. This community offers to individuals, some for the first time ever in their lives, a taste of that acceptance, care, knowledge, and responsibility that is love in action. Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. Most of us find that space of healing communion with like-minded souls. Other individuals recover themselves in their communion with divine spirit. Saint Teresa of Avila found in her communion with the divine recognition, comfort, and solace. She wrote, and I quote, "There is no need to go to heaven in order to speak with one's eternal Father or find delight in him, nor is there any need to shout. However softly we speak, he is near enough to us to hear us. All one need do is go into solitude and look at him within oneself, and not turn away from so good a guest, but with great humility speak to him." End quote. Prayer provides a space where talking cures. It is no doubt a sign of the spiritual crisis of our times that books are written to provide proof that prayer is soothing for the soul. All religious traditions acknowledge that there is comfort in reaching for the sacred through words, whether traditional liturgy, prayer, or chants. Bell Hooks says, "I pray daily as a gesture of spiritual vigilance." Prayer is an exercise that strengthens the soul's power. Reaching for the divine always reminds me of the limitations of human thought and will. Stretching, reaching toward that which is limitless and without boundaries, is an exercise that strengthens my faith and empowers my soul. Prayer allows each person a private place of confession. There is truth in the axiom, confession is good for the soul. It allows us to bear witness to our trespasses, to those ways we miss the mark, a definition of the meaning of sinfulness. It is only as we recognize and confront the circumstances of our spiritual forgetfulness that we assume accountability. In their work, The Raft is Not the Shore, Daniel Berrigan and Thich Nhat Hanh stress that the bridge of illusion must be destroyed before a real bridge can be constructed. In communion with Divine Spirit, we can claim the space of accountability and renew our commitment to that transformation of spirit that opens the heart and prepares us to love. After we have made the choice to be healed in love, faith that transformation will come gives us the peace of mind and heart that is necessary when the soul seeks revolution. It is difficult to wait. No doubt, that is why biblical scriptures urge the seeker to learn how to wait, for waiting renews strength. When we surrender to the wait, we allow changes to emerge within us without anticipation or struggle. When we do this, we are stepping out on faith. In Buddhist terms of this practice of surrender, of letting go, makes it possible for us to enter a space of compassion where we can feel sympathy for ourselves and others. That compassion awakens us to the healing power of service. Love in action is always about service, what we do to enhance spiritual growth. A focus on individual reflection, contemplation, and therapeutic dialogue is vital to healing, but it is not the only way to recover ourselves. Serving others is as fruitful a path to the heart as any other therapeutic practice. To truly serve, we must always empty the ego so that that space can exist for us to recognize the needs of others and be capable of fulfilling them. The greater our compassion, the more aware we are of ways to extend ourselves to others that make healing possible. To know compassion fully is to engage in a process of forgiveness and recognition that enables us to release all the baggage we carry that serves as a barrier to healing. Compassion opens the way for individuals to feel empathy for others without judgment. Judging others increases our alienation. When we judge, we are less able to forgive. The absence of forgiveness keeps us mired in shame. Often our spirits have been broken again and again and again through rituals of disregard in which we are shamed by others or shamed ourselves. Shame breaks and weakens us, keeping us away from the wholeness healing offers. When we practice forgiveness, we let go of shame. Embedded in our shame is always a sense of being unworthy. It separates. Compassion and forgiveness reconnect us. Forgiveness not only enables us to overcome estrangement, it intensifies our capacity for affirming one another. Without conscious forgiveness, there can be no genuine reconciliation. Making amends both to ourselves and to others is the gift compassion and forgiveness offers us. It is a process of emptying out wherein we let go all the waste so that there is a clear place within where we can see other as ourself. Kazarjian explains in Forgiveness, quote, even small acts of forgiveness always have significant ramifications at a personal level, end quote. Love redeems. Despite all the lovelessness that surrounds us, nothing has been able to block our longing for love, the intensity of our yearning. The understanding that love redeems appears to be a resilient aspect of the heart's knowledge. The healing power of redemptive love lures us and calls us toward the possibility of healing. We cannot account for the presence of the heart's knowledge. Like all great mysteries, we are all mysteriously called to love, no matter the condition of our lives, the degree of our depravity or despair. The persistence of this call gives us reason to hope. Without hope, we cannot return to love. Breaking our sense of isolation and opening up the window of opportunity, hope provides us with a reason to go forward. It is a practice of positive thinking. Being positive, living in a permanent state of hopefulness, renews the spirit, renewing our faith in love's promise. Hope is our covenant. I began thinking and writing about love when I heard cynicism instead of hope in the voices of young and old. Cynicism is the greatest barrier to love. It is rooted in doubt and despair. Fear intensifies our doubt. It paralyzes. Faith and hope allow us to let fear go. Fear stands in the way of love. When we take to heart the insistence that there is no fear in love, we understand the necessity of choosing courage, thought, and action. Biblical texts might encourage us to find comfort in knowing that perfect love casts out fear. This is our reminder that even if fear exists, it can be released by the experience of perfect love. The alchemy of perfect love is such that it offers to us all a love that is able to vanquish fear. That which is rendered separate or strange through fear is made whole through perfect love. It is this perfect love that is redemptive, that can, like the intense heat of alchemical fire, burn away impurities and leave the soul free. These words speak directly to the presence of anguish in our lives when we are driven by fear. The practice of loving is the healing force that brings sustained peace. It is the practice of love that transforms. As one gives and receives love, fear is let go. As we live the understanding that there is no fear in love, our anguish diminishes and we garner the strength to enter more deeply into love's paradise. When we are able to accept that giving ourselves over to love completely restores the soul, we are made perfect in love. To return in love, to know perfect love, we surrender the will to power. It is this revelation that makes perfect love so prophetic and revolutionary for our time. We cannot know love if we remain unable to surrender our attachment to power. If any feeling of vulnerability strikes terror in our hearts, lovelessness torments. As our cultural awareness of the ways we are seduced away from love, away from the knowledge that love heals, gains recognition, our anguish intensifies. But so does our yearning. The space of our lack is also the space of possibility. As we yearn, we make ourselves ready to receive the love that is coming to us as gift, as promise, as earthly paradise. And that is a really intense, incredible excerpt of All About Love by Bell Hooks. Now, in reading that, I am not promoting any one particular religious faith. I am not promoting forgiveness. I'm not promoting resiliency. I'm simply giving you an option. Rather than immerse yourselves in fruitless debates about war and the constructs that are pushing these agendas and getting into debates on social media with people, my challenge to you would be to lean into love. Turn within, find the love within yourself and put that out into the world. Something to counter the turmoil and the turbulence and the war. I think love is a good option. Love is a good idea. Thank you, Bell Hooks, one of our great ancestors. Another book recommendation, and the final book recommendation that I have for you today, speaking of great ancestors, is a book by Toni Morrison, who is, I think, probably my favorite all-time author. And it is a compendium of quotes from all of her literary works. It's called The Measure of Our Lives, A Gathering of Wisdom by Toni Morrison. And the foreword is written by Zadie Smith, another amazing, brilliant thinker. So Toni Morrison was just a brilliant human being. And this book, The Measure of Our Lives, A Gathering of Wisdom, is a brief compendium of powerful, impactful quotes that are pulled from all of her literary works and put together in one book. And on page 19, my parting thought to you would be this quote from Toni Morrison. Look to yourself, you free. Nothing and nobody is obliged to save you but you. This is Abena Sankofa Imhotep, and this has been another episode of Black and Privileged in America podcast, presented by AmplifiedDSM.com. Today we've talked about literacy, war, and love. Check out the show notes from today's episode to learn more about the book recommendations, and please visit our website platform at www.amplifieddsm.com and check out my website, abenasankofa.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.